And the last number of weeks, Leonard Williams has arguably been the best defensive tackle, along with Jalen Carter, the best defensive tackle in the game. He's playing at a really, really high level.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday, presented, of course, by DraftKings. That means the civilian GOAT, the NFL Films legend, Greg Cosell, is in the house. Cannot wait to talk to Greg about all these games, including tonight's game, where I am right now, Detroit, Michigan. Packers, Lions. Biggest game of the weekend is on a Thursday night. Doesn't happen very often. And I'm here. I'm calling the biggest game of the weekend. So very fired up to ask Greg about that, as I am to announce the winners tomorrow. Those of you that spread the word via social media, it's so easy to do. At Ross Tucker Pod on any platform, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Just reply or comment or anything. That helps us a lot with the algorithm so more people see the clips that we post. Again, at Ross Tucker Pod or at Ross Tucker NFL on TikTok. Then the sponsor confirmation email winner. I love those of you that take advantage of any of our sponsors. You can use the code Ross at Future Fans. Get one of those amazing boxes. I think the new doors or bathrooms at westshorehome.com/Ross are amazing. Use the Game Time app to get tickets for something, for somebody for the holidays. And then the YouTube shout out, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. If you rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, that counts as well. You got to forward it to me, though, so I see it. Ross at RossTucker.com. Again, Ross at RossTucker.com. It's time for the big show. Greg Cosell, presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly.
The Big Show.
Okay, Greg, let's start with my game tonight. As you can tell, I'm a little bit excited. I mean, it's not only is it the biggest game of the week, and there's so many interesting stats about, how it's, this division, nobody's ever had 3 teams with 9 wins in week 14 before. I mean, the division's loaded. But going into tonight that people are going to be watching, Eagles fans are rooting for the Packers. Vikings fans are rooting for the Packers because we're to that point in the season where people are talking about seeding and they care about that stuff. So they're rooting for other teams to lose. It's a fun part of the season. Curious to get your thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, a couple of things that always stand out with these teams when I watch them is the Lions are just so balanced on the offensive side of the ball with their run game, with their pass game. Their pass game works as effectively as any in the league between the numbers. They do that really well. Goff is a play-action quarterback. He's under center probably more than any other quarterback in the league in the pass game with the play-action, and then they work between the numbers, as I said. The Packers have kind of evolved into being a running football team. It starts there. Their O-line has become pretty physical. They do a really good job in the run game, and they work off that. And Jaden Reed is kind of the wild card in their offense. He's the movable chess piece. He's their movement receiver. He lines up everywhere, including the backfield, and they do a ton of motion with him. And their run game, they've added a lot of wrinkles to basic runs. In fact, they play a lot of what we call pony package, where they play 2 running backs, not a fullback, 2 running backs, and they do a lot with little motions in the backfield to get to base runs, but that's just a totally different look for a defense. And just to make one final point, with all the injuries that Aaron Glenn has gone through on the defensive side of the ball with the Lions, I think he's done an incredible job kind of carving it together, keeping it together. This is a pressure defense. They play man coverage. They attack. He's not let the injuries impact the way he wants to play with that aggressive mentality and toughness mindset that I think permeates that defense.
It's one of the cool things, Greg, about when I'm calling a game and being able to really dive into these teams. Now, I watched both of their last games. I didn't get a chance to watch their first matchup, go back and watch that yet, their first matchup. But, the Lions still play more man coverage than anybody in the league, Greg. And ever since Hutchinson went down, they have pressured as much as anybody in the league.
Yep.
They're right there with the Chiefs and Spagnuolo. So I think that's interesting. I'm not saying everybody else should pressure more, but I do think, the two teams that are 11-1, Greg, are the two teams that blitz the most in the NFL. They're both just under 40%. I don't know what that says, but it's got to say something, right?
Yeah, and again, it's hard to make a definitive worldview statement about that. But I think that for the most part, what teams do try to do defensively, whether they rush for or they pressure, is they want to speed up the quarterback. And they want to make the quarterback have to think through the process after he takes the snap of the ball. So, a part of the pressure as well, there's often disguise and coverage rotation that at times goes with these pressure concepts. So that's what you're trying to do. You do not want to give a quarterback a clean read before the snap, and that doesn't change. But Aaron Glenn, you just have to know the individual, and I don't know if you know him at all, but he's just that kind of guy. He's a toughness guy. He's a competitive guy. It's just the way he's built, and he is not going to sit back and be reactive to offenses no matter who he puts out there.
It's so crazy, too. First of all, the Lions have a zillion coaches that are former players, and
Yep.
a bunch of them are former teammates of mine with like 3 different teams. I don't know what that says about me. But then it's really crazy when you consider how many guys have gone down for them on the defensive side. Aleem McNeil is like their only D lineman on the 2 deep that is still going. Aiden Hutchinson, Pascal, DJ Reader, Marcus Davenport, Onwuzurike. All those guys are out tonight. It's pretty wild. It really is.
They've gotten really good play from unexpected players and you've probably seen this guy on tape, but Nowaski has become a really intriguing player for them because he lines up basically as a stacked player depending on their personnel, and he also lines up on the ball as a pass rusher, and he's given them really meaningful snaps the last number of weeks.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say, Greg, is we had Alex Anzalone on the show yesterday. He'll be back by the playoffs, but he made it sound like Quan Alexander, that they're going to have to really count on him and use him the next few weeks now that Rodriguez went down as well.
Yeah, because with Anzalone and Rodriguez out, they signed Jamal Adams. I don't know what that means, but he's probably a linebacker in their system anyway, because you could argue they have the best safety duo in the league in Brian Branch and Joseph, so he's certainly not going to play safety for them.
No, I think you're right. I think he's like linebacker depth, but it might end up being, maybe not tonight, but I think it might end up being Jack Campbell and Quan Alexander, until Anzalone comes back. We'll have to see how that unfolds. Let's get to another game that I think a lot of people are interested in. It's the Falcons and the Vikings. And I'm curious about both teams here, Greg.
Yeah.
But in particular, Kirk Cousins, Greg, he threw 2 of the worst interceptions I've ever seen him throw. And, man, what are you seeing from him? I don't want to ask you a leading question.
That's and I'm being honest, Ross, that's one of those things where I don't have an answer because it's so uncharacteristic of him to do what he did in this last game against the Chargers. Guys throw interceptions. He's had, games where he's thrown interceptions in his career. It seems like he has 2 bad games every season. But the nature of those interceptions were almost rookie-type plays where they're head-scratchers. And that's why I don't have an answer. They were just really, really bad interceptions, as if he just didn't understand what he was looking at. And you could make the argument, and I know Cousins hasn't been in a championship game or a Super Bowl, so a lot of people don't necessarily think of him this way. But Kirk Cousins is one of the best pure pocket passers in the league. That's his game. He's not a movement player. And the last couple of weeks, he just has not looked like that. And I don't have a brilliant answer for you, but he just has not looked like that. And that's been his entire career. That's who he is.
Do you see there's some stats out there that indicate that he's not throwing with the same level of velocity? Do you see? Can you see that on tape?
Again, I haven't come away feeling that. Is it possible if you're on the field, closer to him? Because, it's always valuable to see someone throw live. If there's been a drop off, to me, from a tape standpoint, it would be minuscule. I wouldn't say. First of all, he's never had a gun, so that's a hard question for me to answer. I don't think the tape reflects that.
It's just wild to me, Greg. It's Cousins against his former team, and here the quarterback for his former team, Sam Darnold, is playing a lot better than Cousins. I mean, who would have thought? When the Vikings moved on from Kirk Cousins, I thought they were cooked. That they'd be instead they're 10-2. I mean, Kevin O'Connell is unbelievable.
Yeah, instead of being cooked, they're cooking. But just getting back to the Vikings, just their defense for a minute against Cousins, since we were just talking about Cousins, is they'll pressure him because they are a high-pressure defense. They are among the top 2 or 3 in the league in percentage of rushing 5 or more. So given Cousins' issues and given the fact that he's probably a little uncomfortable right now, and even if you're a veteran, there's just a confidence level. Right now, he's probably not feeling great. He's probably feeling a little hesitant and tentative in how he's playing, and they will go after him. Because I don't think the receiving core necessarily would scare them. So I think you're going to see them go after Cousins. But just to get to Darnold, Darnold is, and again, it's an offense in some ways very much like the Lions, where they do such a good job with their route concepts and route combinations that they can define the reads and the throws for Darnold. I think he has a really good sense within the context of Kevin O'Connell's offense and pass game of where the throw is going to be before the snap of the ball. And he's done a really good job even going through progressions, which is what a lot of people thought he could not do very well in his past. But I think because it's so cleanly defined, you get a really good sense of how that plays out even when you take the snap. And he's looked really efficient.
All right, let's talk about the Carolina Panthers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Interested in both these teams. I don't know. The more I watch Bryce Young, Greg, the more positive things it feels like he's doing.
Yeah, I think he's been a lot more decisive, and he has to be, because when you're under 6 feet or just 6 feet, I guess he's 5'11" give or take. I can't remember what the combine number was, but you have to be decisive because you cannot sit in the pocket, Ross. As you know, you're an O-lineman. No matter how great you are with an O-line, at some point the longer a quarterback's in the pocket, the closer the bodies get to the quarterback. It's just, that's the way it works. So he has to be really decisive with his throws, whether it's decisive in turning it loose or whether it's decisive in getting out of there. And he's become more decisive. He seems to be more aware of where the ball has to go within the timing and rhythm and structure of the pass game. And he's looking just like a more confident player right now.
Meanwhile, the Eagles, they just keep it rolling, Greg, really on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. They have a defined identity. They're a running football team, and you can't lose sight of 2 things that are really critically important. Number 1, Jalen Hurts' importance to the run game, the design run game. Not just as a runner himself, but what it means for the rest of the run game and how the defense has to play because of Jalen Hurts. And one thing that cannot be overstated, he does not turn the ball over. That is absolutely critical. They don't throw the ball a lot. Many of us thought that they'd have to do that this past week, Ross, against the Ravens. Maybe that the game would be 30-27 and they'd have to throw it a lot. But they were able to play Eagles football. Hurts only had 21 dropbacks. He was very efficient. And one thing they do every game, and this is another area where Hurts has been very, very good, is they do no huddle selectively throughout every game. And Hurts does an outstanding job of controlling the game in the no huddle, understanding what he's seeing, and therefore making the proper play call. Like, for instance, the Barkley 25-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. came out of no huddle, and Hurts did a great job of recognizing the weakness of the front and the rotation of the coverage, and he called the handoff to Barkley.
You know, two things that are interesting to me about that. One is it feels when they get to the fourth quarter, it feels like Hurts kind of knows when the defense is wearing down or that they have him on the ropes, and that's when he goes no huddle. And, Greg, I don't remember feeling like this about any offense or back in a while. You can feel that he's going to break one. Like you can just sense that Saquon's going to break one. You're not surprised at all when he does.
No, you're right. And the crazy thing is, the Eagles have been in close games. They've won 8 in a row, and 5 of those games, Ross, were one-score games going into the fourth quarter. So they're not blowing. The score might end up looking like a blowout, but it's not a blowout going to the fourth quarter. You know, the last ball that Hurts threw this week against the Ravens, the last pass he threw came at 9:52 in the fourth quarter. He threw 2 passes in the fourth quarter.
Wow. That's a great stat. I didn't realize that. The only question I have there is I would love to know how much of their stuff is call it and run it versus how much he's reading. Because if he's pure reading, he made the wrong read multiple times as far as I could tell in terms of whether to give it or pull it himself. Like one time he gave it, he should have pulled it. One time he pulled it, he should have gave it. So I don't know. We don't know if it's call it and run it or not.
Yeah, but they do. But I think for the most job, they do a really good job. I mean, I thought the Goddard 17-yard touchdown, which is a play they run a lot, it's basically zone read with an RPO tag. And they're really good at that, and it just puts the defense in a real dilemma.
What about Browns Steelers, Greg? That one's kind of juicy after the way Jameis played Monday night.
Well, and also, they played 2 weeks ago, as you know, on Thursday night. And Russell Wilson, even though they lost that game, Wilson was phenomenal on third down against a really difficult defense to play against because Jim Schwartz is a classic guy that changes the picture from pre-snap to post-snap. And Russell Wilson in that game against Cleveland a couple of weeks ago, like I said, it was only 2 weeks ago, he was 11 for 12 for 194 yards on third down. And he did a really, really good job against that Browns defense. And again, that was the snow game, so the fourth quarter was kind of a crazy game. It was even hard to watch on the tape. You couldn't see a lot. But Russell Wilson is playing really, really well. They do a lot with multiple tight ends. They play with 2 tight ends. They play with 3 tight ends. They really try to dictate defensively how you have to play. So this offense right now is playing at a pretty high level.
Love it. I want to get to some of these other games, make sure we hit a bunch here. So let's move on and let's get next to the Buffalo Bills and their game against the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are probably familiar with the Bills. They won 8 in a row. So let's talk about the Rams because the Rams, they're a team that have to win games. That NFC West is basically wide open. So what do you have to defend when you play the Rams? You have to defend, they play 11 personnel a high percentage of the time, close to 90%. You have to defend motion. You have to defend the play-action pass game. You have to defend the middle of the field because they work the middle of the field. Stafford, just like Goff, for instance, is as good a window thrower between the numbers as there is in the league. And a lot of their routes, because of the play-action element, and he's under center, just like Jared Goff, so you get the play-action element where those second-level defenders have a little bit of a conflict. So that's what you have to defend. And the Bills, they play a lot of too-high structure. They pretty much, I don't know if this is their philosophy, but they pretty much say, hey, if you want to run the ball, that's okay, because when you get to our red zone area, we're not going to give up touchdowns. So if you want to take the time and work, 10, 12, 13, 14 plays, we're okay with that. But the key thing against the Rams is you just have to be able to defend the middle of the field in the pass game.
Let's talk, say, in the NFC West, another game of teams that just played recently. Yeah. Seahawks, Cardinals. That's a big one, Greg.
I guess, believe it or not, the 2 things that interest me about that game would be the 2 defenses. I think Jonathan Gannon, and I don't know if you've done any Cardinals games, they do not have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but they are a difficult defense to play against. They do a lot of things with their secondary, the way in which they line up, the way in which they move around. Their tough to decipher. And all of a sudden, over the last 4 weeks, the Seahawks defense has played really, really well. They've gotten Jenkins back, the safety, so they play a lot of snaps of big nickel now. And Julian Love is playing at a really, really high level. And the last number of weeks, Leonard Williams has arguably been the best defensive tackle, along with Jalen Carter, the best defensive tackle in the game. He's playing at a really, really high level. So these two defenses, which I'm sure not a lot of people are talking about, have really been sort of a driving force for what these teams are right now.
Totally agree. And I have done one Cardinals game. I did their opener, and would not be surprised if I do another one here coming up. Last one would be Monday night's game, Greg, and that is the Chargers and the Chiefs. Or maybe that's Sunday night. I don't know. But anyway,
No,
Chargers, Chiefs.
Monday night, yeah. Chargers, Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs are such an odd team because we know that offensively they have not looked like, in the past, what we think of with the Chiefs. But the one thing that they do really well, and it allows them to control the ball, is they are phenomenal on third down. And it's still Mahomes and Kelsey on third down. That's still the connection that drives everything they do on third down. And I believe they're the number one third down offense in the league. They're definitely over 50% conversion rate. They may be number one in the NFL in time of possession. They're certainly in the top three if they're not number one. So for all the so-called issues they're having on offense, and yes, it's not an explosive offense. It hasn't become that. We thought it would. Worthy has still not really become a major part of what they do, but they control the ball, and therefore, in many ways, they still control the pace and tempo of the game, which allows Steve Spagnuolo's defense to still be a dominant feature.
Love talking with Greg Cosell every week. Make sure you check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.
My friends at West Shore have their biggest discount of the year right now. 25% off the entire project. Payments as low as $99 a month, or get free interest with no payments and no interest until 2026. You guys know I just got the 3 new doors. They are glorious. Not only do they look like brand new doors, because they are brand new doors, you almost don't realize how bad your old doors are, how worn your old doors are, until you get new doors. They feel better. There's not as much outdoor noise, even though it's been windy. It is absolutely amazing. Here's the deal, right? It's the end of the year, and it slows down for a lot of people. So how does West Shore Home react? Giving you the biggest discount of the year. It's westshorehome.com/Ross. I highly recommend just getting an appointment. westshorehome.com/Ross. Just see what they can do for you. Absolutely love the holiday season because it's a great time to get together with family and friends. Smirnoff is the world's #1 vodka, an official vodka partner of the NFL. This year, there's more opportunities to watch football and make delicious Smirnoff cocktails than ever before. We just had Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Now we'll have the Saturday games, the Christmas games, obviously Sundays. This holiday season, when you're enjoying the game and your cocktails, please make sure to drink responsibly. Take a minute, make a plan, never drive impaired. Smirnoff, we do game days. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, a couple of notes around the league. The Ravens, they suspended their wide receiver Deontay Johnson for a game, while the NFL, they did uphold the 3-game suspension of Texans linebacker Azeez Al-Shire.
Well, so I was a swing and a miss for me on yesterday's show. I really thought that would get reduced by a game. I thought it'd get reduced to 2 games, so I'm a little bit surprised that Ramon Foster upheld the full 3 games. That was not expected. And then Al-Shire posted that if you want me to be the villain, I'll be the villain. I don't know. Okay, I guess we'll see what that means for him when he comes back. The Deontay Johnson thing is wild to me. I mean, he was told to go into the game, in an NFL game. He's on a roster. He's in uniform. and he wouldn't go in. This guy, I don't think I've ever seen a guy just totally destroy their market value in a contract year. This guy had a great chance to get another really nice deal, and he's totally blown it. I mean, who would give him any money? If this is how he's acting when he's trying to get money, how's he going to act when you give him a big deal?
It's rare to say this, Ross, but we got the game of the week tonight, and it's one you might know a thing or two about. It's the Lions and the Packers. Who do you like in this one?
Well, this is my Thursday night football pick presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. I'm going to go with the Packers in this one. Now, they both have some injury issues. Romeo Doubs and Jair Alexander won't play for the Packers, but the Lions are especially beat up. The Packers, really ever since they lost to the Lions in Week 9, they've been playing really, really well. This is a rematch. It's revenge for the Packers. And the Lions have been on an incredible run here, winning 10 straight. Kind of feels like they're due for a loss, and this would be the type of game they would lose. Close game, could go either way, probably field goal either way, but I'll say 24-23, Packers get the upset.
We've got a reunion in Buffalo. The Bills are signing longtime safety Micah Hyde to their practice squad.
That was kind of cool, right? I wasn't really expecting that. I don't know how much he'll play or what his health is at this point. But, you know, they're signing him for a reason, and they sign him, and he makes it very clear this is it. He's retiring after these 2 months. He's trying to help from December 5th to February 10th or whatever. He's trying to contribute in any way he can to get this team to the Super Bowl. He was part of the core for so long, and he wants to help, and maybe there's an injury or maybe he can help, and he finds a way to go out there and get this team to the Super Bowl. That would be awesome. The Jags in the news, by the way, as well. They placed quarterback Trevor Lawrence on IR. Sounds like his season is over. And they also claimed Josh Reynolds, the wide receiver, off waivers from the Broncos. So Jags still trying to make moves to get better. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. You guys know I think it's the best gift for anybody for the holidays. In particular, please check out the website, myfrontpagestory.com. Strongly consider it for a parent or a grandparent. They, in particular, will love every aspect of it. BackOfficeScheduler.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Sporticulture, and Pizza Boy